speaks very little.
Rabbi Chabad.
What is that?
So some interesting features and details to mitzvot Kibbud Avayim. One technical detail and then one very bombastic concept that you may or may not have heard so far. So there's an interesting detail about the names. I think it's important to mention this only because I personally know people my age, not so much older but more so younger, in Israel at least, that do refer to their parents, or at least one of them, by the first name. Parents are married, the parents are divorced. So the Rambam writes like this. One should not refer to father, it works for a mother just as well, not while they're alive or after they pass, by their first name, but rather you should say, Abba Mori or Imi Marati, in other words, my father, my sir, father, referring to your mother in such a way. We mentioned this in the past, that most languages that did reserve some kind of a formal conjugation, a second person formal way of addressing someone, typically parents and children, the children interacted with the parents, addressed their parents with the formal. I can say this 100% for French. It was true of German to a certain point. English just abandoned the whole thou, thee, thine concept. I mean, in Old English they had it. It's effectively a Germanic language. So thou, thee, and thine actually used to be the informal way of addressing people. It was considered the less respectful way, meaning it was more familiar to say to someone, thou hast 5 pence worth of milk, etc. So English abandoned it in favor of the formal, where everybody's addressed more formally. And in most other languages, it degenerated linguistically into the informal way of addressing. So I don't know anybody alive today in France who refers to their parents by vous.
I do.
You know people who still...
It's like very
Our age?
Yeah. Old Catholic families.
In
Really?
really in the
Even
in the countryside or mamash in the
No.
cities?
Even in the city, yeah.
Really?
but very old school,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have never, and I've been
It's
around.
really rare.
I have never met one grandparents that I've seen, and I guess either if the parents spoke to them this way or if it was just they taught the kids to do this, but I had never seen it. But yeah, it used to be this way. Even amongst the nobility, they refer husband and wife would refer to each other this way. So forget addressing someone by his or her first name. That back in the day was considered so familiar as to be an insult. You just wouldn't do it. You wouldn't call a police officer or a judge by his or her first name. You should probably be careful about doing this as well. So certainly when it comes to your parents, again, if the thought hadn't crossed someone's mind, we wouldn't have a halacha written by the Rambam 1,000 years ago saying don't do it. Yes, there are people who thought this way. I'm going to qualify this in a few minutes. We'll explain exactly how and why. At any rate, had you asked the Rambam, he probably would have told you, yes, if you're the speaker of a language, and people did speak Spanish back in the day, it wasn't the same Spanish spoke today, but it was close enough, you would address your parents in the formal tense. In other languages, they had other ways of doing this, just the way the language systems work. So in Semitic language, they may just as well have referred to someone either in the plural or in the third person. Third person is much less direct. It's not me telling you what to do or me addressing you or directing you. It's more, would the king like for me to do so and so, as opposed to saying, hey king, what are you thinking? Like, send me a text message when you're done with whatever. And it's a little bit too direct, so it implies a certain degree of informality. It's a great opportunity to comment on some of what certain particular groups today, I think Breslev is especially encouraging of just talking it out with Hashem, addressing Hashem, and talking to God. Like Rav Sabato was very discouraging of this concept. He didn't see how that contributed to anybody's spirituality. If you address Hashem like a friend or like a colleague or a neighbor or a classmate, I mean, what's the point? If it encourages you to think in informal terms, it's probably not going to do much for your relationship with Hashem. If anything, we should teach people to revere, not necessarily to be fearful, like scared of God. We spoke about that last week. It's just a fearful respect. Like, why would I do something potentially offensive?
I remember this is a very famous story that there's like an elderly man at the kotel, and he's talking to Hashem, and he says, yesterday I went da da da. He started saying, and then all of a sudden he stopped himself. He goes, oh wait, I told you that yesterday. like he was talking to Hashem, like he had a conversation with him yesterday, and he started saying something. He's like, "Oh, I already told you that," and everyone says how beautiful it is, like that kind of closeness. That it's talking to him as you would talk to your father. So, I don't know if it's everyone's personal opinion or.
Yeah. Look, when it comes to the way people interact with Hashem, L'havdil and not so much L'havdil, I would just as soon say the same way husbands and wives interact. There's more than one approach to maintaining a relationship, and it's going to differ a little bit from person to person. I'll give you a funny example of this. When my brother got married, I had a really dear friend, lovely guy. He was from the former Yugoslavia. I guess Serbian would be the better way of saying it today. Lovely, he's like my best friend throughout college. Not a Jewish guy, just very learned and refined and cultured, educated, a really lovely guy. I found him on Facebook a short while ago. So, she just had a baby. So, because he had become basically part of the family, we had him over, often, vacation, went on trips together. So when my brother got married, it was just like normal that we would invite this friend of mine, Veliko, to come to the wedding. And so at some point he asked me where, the details where the wedding was going to be and how it was going to be set up. And the wedding was in a Bet Knesset. I think it was in the 5 towns, if I remember correctly. And this is the first time this guy ever went to a synagogue. And he was the most super respectful person I've ever seen. We had family that came from Israel in jeans and t-shirts. And this guy was in a tuxedo. This guy was like, is it okay if I sit down? Do people sit down in synagogues? It's like, is it a sign of disrespect? I'm not going to eat anything. He walked around with a kippah the whole time. He's like, want anybody to think anything different or weird? And people making brachot. He's like, oh man, yes, that's the way to go. So there's a certain reverence that comes with formality. And there's a certain, we've said it before, familiarity breeds contempt. Sometimes you feel so comfortable somewhere that you kind of, you lose some of the reverence, you lose some of the respect. The converse side of this story involving Rav Dov Lior, he's a Dayan in Kiryat Arba. So he was there when they reconquered and basically annexed this back into what was always historically part of Eretz Yisrael. So Israeli soldiers who had been fighting in and around the Hebron Kiryat Arba area were involved in this is the 6-day war, and it was kind of muddy, kind of bloody battle. And by the time they had secured the area, which basically means they controlled all the hilltops and the entrances and the exits, some of the soldiers who, even if they weren't that observant, they knew enough to say, this is a holy place, the tomb of the patriarchs and the matriarchs. So right away they ran in, and they bumped into this mufti that was there, and some of them, put on kippot and started reading Tehillim. So the mufti comes out, and he starts shouting, and he says, look at this disrespect that you have. You're wearing muddy and dirty boots, and you walk into a holy place. We Muslims would take off our shoes, we'd take off our socks, we would put down some kind of a carpet, and prostrate ourselves in such a way. So Rav Lior's response to him was, a visitor or a guest in a place that's holy, that's the natural reaction. And it's beautiful that you respect the place so much. It's like, these are our parents. This is our house. It's okay. Abba and Ima love us just the way we are. We'll change clothes as soon as we get the opportunity to. But we're here now, and they want us home. Even if we're a little bit muddy and sweaty and dirty, that's okay. We belong here. This is our house. So there's a very cute side to informality too. How cute is it? It's a balance. I think it's not hard for us to appreciate that the more informal you get, I guess if it comes out of respect and out of appreciation and affection, it's probably not as abrasive or offensive as being informal to the point of being short, cutting corners, just ignoring things, is what it is. Would it be bizarre of me to address my wife like royalty? It might be. It's probably appropriate. She deserves to be treated like a queen, and she absolutely is. It's a shortcoming of mine that I don't, remember this every time we talk or text, etc. But at the end of the day, I don't think it's as offensive as being short and informal. I think there's much more room for offense there. So, far be it from me to critique someone's means of connecting with Hashem. If this is what works for this particular individual, great. I would probably have to assume somewhere, like I'll do a little bit of spiritual accounting and say, maybe for some people who are a little bit simpler, that works great, and they don't mean any disrespect by it, and it's someone who feels an intense connection with Hashem and they want to talk or discuss everything, fine. Personally, it's the philosophy that I subscribe to, that you don't talk to Hashem like you talk to people. I mean, we use words because that's all we have, that's all we know. I don't think it builds the relationship, or it does much for you or your relationship with God, to just ramble and babble, and there's a holiness associated with Tehillim, not just because it was composed by David HaMelech. This is how David interacted with Hashem. He didn't talk to people this way. He didn't. There's a different, what you can do to distinguish between Hashem and people is probably a responsibility. I mean, think about how respectful you can be. Make requests, but we praise Hashem before and after we make requests. And a little bit more reference, yeah.
So aside of the standardized texts like the Amidah, etc., when you pray to God, will you use the third person, like in your personal prayer?
So we have a precedent for using the second person. So you're referring to Hashem in the second person, albeit very respectfully. Hashem, my judge of my forefathers, the eternal one, master of the world, etc. So I guess in that context it's done. I've brought this up before as well. I never got a good explanation. I don't know why Hashem, at least in Jewish, like in Sidurim, translated in French, you refer to Hashem as true. I don't get that. I don't see why that would be the case.
And the Christians...
I'm sorry, so the Christians use Vu. Again, maybe one of the older story with the Jewish soldiers in Marat HaMachpelah.
That's the same explanation that I heard. It's like we're closer, so we
Hebrew
allow some kind
Hebrew
of
doesn't have such a conjugation. I don't know to tell you this. I don't know if I'm not mistaken. I remember Rav be asking the same question. I don't know if he had an answer for it as much as he was curious about it. How that became the case. But at any rate, what I would suggest is that if you have a particularly personal tefillah, and we should all be in the habit of, I'm not saying composing on a regular basis, but we all have personal requests to make of Hashem. You have to have a way to do it. I would suggest doing it as respectfully as possible. Keep it short. Again, you don't want to ramble or babble or end up saying something inappropriate or implying that you have merits or deserve something. You have to be gentle about those things. And at the same time, there's a precedent, there's a convention. There are things that we request, and there's ways to request, and there's ways that we don't. My explanation for the Breslov concept is that probably this is, I guess it makes more sense for people who are kind of at the beginning of their journey. I'm sure they wouldn't explain it that way. To me, it makes sense in that context. You'd have to ask someone who really subscribes to it to give you a good explanation of it. To me, it makes sense for people who are just getting started. So you know how to talk to people, and you interact with people, you request things of them, they request things of you, you have expectations of each other, that's how relationships work. Fine. You can strike up a relationship with Hashem. So do I have to study prophecy and meditate and fast? So the higher the price, the higher the cost to me of establishing this relationship, the less likely I am to do it, the less likely it's going to last. So to give you a quick and easy point of entry into this concept of reaching out to Hashem, praying to Hashem, beseeching Hashem to do what it is that you'd like, first start speaking the way you would speak to someone else. Get used to this concept of addressing Hashem as the creator of the world, the one who has all the power, the omniscient, the omnipotent, etc., can resolve any issue or problem that I have. With time, my assumption or my expectation would be that you learn more, appreciate more, and you interact a little bit differently. Look, a funny example of this with kids. To me, it's cute, it's adorable when I interact with kids. So this past Shabbat, we had a very lovely French couple over for lunch, and they had one of their sons. They came with two kids, and a boy says to we noticed he took off after having a bite of halal. He went to play with our kids. Now our kids are great, don't get me wrong. He invested in some food. We cooked some really nice things just to... So at some point I said to him, so, sweetheart, you're not going to have a little something to eat? So and he just naturally addresses me, and I love this. Not that I care, people call me whatever they want to call me. But he's like, I don't really feel like I'm going to eat so much. He's like, but, he's like, again, in the informal second person, he's like, just let me know when dessert comes out, Like, je m'avertis quand manger. I'm like, okay, fine, no problem, sure, sweetheart. Whatever you want, if that makes you happy. So it's cute. He's a child. He's a good 30 plus years younger than me, which is fine. He doesn't understand the whole concept of formal, informal, people you know, people you don't know, experience, in life, responsibility, etc. It's a very simple, very innocent interaction. So I don't expect him to interact in an especially formal way. That's a concept you learn over time. Maybe your parents can teach you or train you in certain things, fine. We're not sticklers for these things like they used to be. When I was in Switzerland, I remember people getting yelled at for addressing people inappropriately, like informal versus formal or the opposite. So this works for someone who's so innocent. I guess back to your point, Andrea. It works for someone who's so innocent that you don't mean anything more than just, I want to reach out and strike up a conversation. Don't know how one discusses with God, so here's my best effort at it. At a certain point, all I can tell you is that we have no biblical precedent for such a thing. Anything that we have interaction with Hashem is prayer. So either our ancestors just were constantly praying, or the only psukim that we have recorded of their addressing Hashem happen to be requests.
We have the biblical precedent for Chazal ShaBa.
Sure.
People who are starting from
repented?
nothing. No, yeah, not in the Talmudic sense. I mean, somebody who started from.
We have
What, Rabbi
converts.
Akiva?
What's a convert if not someone? By the way, Rahav is referred to as having done teshuvah. Yitro, the same way. He was like the world's greatest idolater, and he found his way back to Hashem. Rahav wasn't Jewish, but she specialized in something else.
You have examples like Rabbi Akiva or Resh Lakish?
We do, yeah. If you're asking about biblical concepts where someone wasn't born observant, we have examples of Amei Haaretz, Manoach, the father of Shimshon, a good example of this. And he makes these bizarre gestures. He wants to sacrifice a goat to an angel. The angel's like, why would you sacrifice to me? If anything, give it to God. I'm not going to eat from your food or your drink. So we have people who, I guess conversion would be the better example of that than anything else. But someone starting somewhere and eventually arriving at a higher level of understanding, this is the way things naturally progress. All I'm saying is that Rav Sabato didn't really get the point of talking to Hashem like you would talk to your best friend.
I hear you. It's just that, personally, coming from, again, not understanding what Hashem is and not incorporating any Torah in my life, it has been a very gradual process. Gradually becoming more and more formal with Hashem, and at times when I feel, for me it's a fluid interaction. It's not, I can't always maintain that level of formality. So sometimes I need to let myself be a bit more informal, and when I feel I can live up to it to be more formal. It's a lot of pressure, and it can be anxiety.
We keep tefillah short for reasons like that, especially if you're ad-libbing, you're just composing something on the spot, you're making a spontaneous request. Just keep it short, keep it to the point. Don't delve too long. You don't have, that much. Look, in terms of flesh and blood, if you do get a meeting with the president or with the king, you typically keep it short and just concise to the point, and you're respectful, and you get done what you need to get done. There's a really funny midrash that compares Moshe to Yoshua. I don't know if you've ever heard this. So we're told that Moshe, when Hashem tells him after Chet HaEgel, I'm going to destroy the whole nation, he says, don't, if you want to erase me from the book, I'm not going to be here, and you'll have to take my name out of the Torah and give it to someone else. So he's negotiating. So Hashem says to him, fine, I'm not going to send the Shekhinah with you, it will burn all of you and consume you in your entirety. Rather, I'm going to send an angel. And then Moshe responds, we're not leaving this, we're not going anywhere until Shekhinah comes back to us. Says the Midrash, Yoshua, the first time an angel appears to him, right, he falls flat on his face and he's like, tell me if you're with us or against us. What can we do? How can I say? And I was like, Yoshua is serving the angel. He considers himself subservient to the angel, whereas Moshe is arguing. I'm not moving from this spot until Shekhinah comes back. Until we work out some kind of a deal. We're gonna refinance this thing and we're gonna figure it out. So it's not a question of formality versus informality. It's just Yoshua knowing full well where he stood and what he was capable of and what he could and couldn't reasonably expect. Was not in the same position as Moshe, who can negotiate with the creator of the universe. It's an incredible thing. So for us to imply that we're on that level, or for us to assume a certain degree of familiarity with Hashem, I think is borderline offensive. You have to be really careful. I'm not saying the concept doesn't have any merit to it. All I'm saying is it's something that I would try to wean someone off at some point. Learn that there is such a thing, first of all, as a creator, that you can interact with Hashem, you can ask that Hashem should nullify bad decrees, etc., change the course of your life, but you would learn the formality with time. No one takes kids seriously when they say and do crazy and stupid and irreverent or disrespectful things. At a certain age, it becomes mighty offensive. At a certain age, you know, don't tell me you don't know there's such a thing as adults and people with positions that command respect, people of a certain social stature. So when you mature beyond that point, the expectations change, the rules of engagement change.
We do have an example of this in Bereshit when Yehuda approaches Yosef to plead for Benjamin's life.
Mm-hmm.
It said Vaigash means he approaches as if to gain a little time, saying, You're second to Paro, you could have killed me already, yet I'm just approaching, and if you haven't killed me yet, maybe I can, politely place in a little plea for
Right.
Benjamin.
After a few rounds of interaction.
Yeah.
And after a couple of disappointments.
But he just approaches very...
Right, so he approaches delicately, and he appreciates that Yosef has the authority, if he wants, to execute him, etc. He can kill all of them if he wants. By the way, the same logic is employed by Shimshon's mother. When the angel comes, and so first if someone flips out, he's like, oh my God, we saw God, we're going to die. She says, first of all, it was an angel, it wasn't God. Second of all, if he wanted to kill us, he could have killed us already the first time. He already appeared a second time, he can kill us whenever he wants. He hasn't, let's deduce from this that he's not going to, and things are going to be okay, the prophecy is going to come true. So it does come with time. We hope to achieve a certain degree of, and you see, by the way, in the Talmud we have this too. Choni HaMe'agel, you familiar with the story? Mesechet Ta'anit. So Choni HaMe'agel was a Tana, was a tremendous tzaddik, and he was in a period of a drought, and so he basically decreed upon himself. He said, the Am Yisrael needs for the rains weren't falling, so he drew that's where he got the name, Choni HaMe'agel. He made a circle. So he drew a line in the sand with a cane, made a circle, and he said, I'm going to stay here until it starts raining. And then it rained. And then it rained too hard, and then he said, okay, so I'm going to make a circle. I'm not moving until it stops raining. And then it stopped raining. It seems like Hashem is doing exactly what he wants, but it's in a way not exactly, like he tried to force it, and even that there was a pushback. We're very polite about the way that we make requests. We don't demand or expect them. And again, this is your interaction with your parents ought to reflect this, because this is how you're supposed to interact with Hashem. Your parents are more tangible examples of authority, of what should ultimately be not a question of unquestioned, infallible authority. It's you never question the respect you're supposed to have for them. Right? The other example, I don't think we're going to get to it tonight. We're not. The other example that I wanted to get through is what happens if your parents embarrass you or humiliate you. I think pretty much everyone has felt at some point in their lives like, I have the most embarrassing parents in the world. All they do, and they do it on purpose. They try to embarrass me in front of my best friends. So you're halachically forbidden from responding to this in any negative or disrespectful way, which bizarrely enough is probably the way you're supposed to react when you think that Hashem is doing something that makes you feel bad or uncomfortable or doesn't make you especially happy. Because if you respect Hashem when Hashem does good things for you, and you don't respect Hashem when Hashem doesn't do good things for you, then you're what we call a fair weather friend. You're friendly when the weather's good and everyone's happy and people are smiling. And if Hashem doesn't give you everything that you want right away, then what happens? There's no relationship. So that's when the relationship is being tested, and that's when the expectations of us and the respect that we show Hashem are even higher. Now that you didn't get what you wanted, are we still friends? Yeah.
I have a hard time kind of viewing it as like a reflection, not a reflection, but it's not the same to me as your relationship with your parents. Because let's say you do something wrong, your parents punish you. You know what you're getting punished for. You have somebody to speak back to. You're more in place. And with Hashem, like, you don't know necessarily why things are happening. And sometimes things are happening because you're meant to question, what are you doing wrong? What should you be doing? And I feel like just that in itself makes your relationship totally different. Because I would never go up to my parents and say, or I shouldn't ever, like, why am I grounded right now? I know when I'm wrong, I know why they're punishing me, but something can be happening in my life and I have no idea why.
So in defense of men, we don't always understand why you're mad. I'm just putting it out there. I'm not saying it in his name, I'm saying it in mine.
I'm speaking gender neutrally.
Right. I know I'm supposed to have understood by now what I did wrong. I still don't know. So just tell me. But your parents only punish you for things they can see or they can hear or emails that got forwarded to them. Your parents don't see everything, don't hear everything, don't experience. If anything, you can say your parents only punish you when they catch you. What? The question's almost the opposite. It's like, I'm surprised Hashem, and again, the Gemara says you shouldn't say this, but one could wonder why Hashem doesn't punish us more often than He does. For the things that no one else can see, and no one else can hear, and no one else can tell, for what I'm thinking, for what I'm believing, for how I feel. Am I mad? Am I angry? Do I accept what Hashem gave me? Do I not? Do I reject it? Do I resent it? So if my parents are punishing me because they're upset about something, true, it might have something to do with my interaction with them. If they perceive something as especially disrespectful of them or their property or their work or their money or their car or whatever, then, it's much easier for me to understand why they'd be upset. At the same time, they only punish you for things that they can quantify or experience through their own senses. Could something really happen to me where I say, there's no way I deserve that? Hashem, you're totally wrong. That's just ridiculous. It's like you're grounding me for nothing. Like, who would have the audacity to say Hashem doesn't know what He's doing, doesn't know how to count, doesn't pay attention, doesn't notice the details? Is that what we're implying? That's just it. When someone's upset, this is why the Gemara says anybody who's angry is as if you're worshiping Avodah Zarah. It was a pretty loaded statement, because I get angry 20 times a day. Not an idolater, what do you mean? I went to the B&B today. I should fast for a week. A situation is presented to you. You can't change it. The DMV is the DMV. You present a certificate of retardation in order to get a job like this, and they only take the most qualified candidates.
It's on tape. It's on tape.
If you know anyone who works at the DMV, they're probably crazy and inefficient because it's a government organization. Okay. So you go there, and then you have to go back and get the documents you forgot, and you come back a second time. But at the end of the day, it's out of your control. There's only so much you can do. You can either accept it, that Hashem in some strange way either wants it to be this way or wants the world to be able to be this way. Short of calling these people prophets, Hashem knows them and you, and what else you could have done with the 3 hours you wasted driving back and forth to the DMV, and it's okay. For you to assume that it's not, is to assume that you know better, that you have a finer understanding of detail, that your bookkeeping is more precise, and you balance your books better than Hashem knows. Like it really means so much. It's so audacious of us to say to Hashem, I'm mad at your reality. I'm mad at you for what you gave me. I'm mad at you for what you didn't give to me. And you're being mad means I have expectations. I have demands. They weren't met. And I am beside myself at how disgusting this reality is to me. There's no logical explanation for this. Whatever it is, I don't want to hear it. I refuse to accept it. It's an extremely arrogant thing to say. It implies an awful lot about what you think you know, and reveals very little understanding. The truth is, if you think about it, you come to conclusions like, I've caused people to wait before, sometimes I lose things, sometimes I don't get things done on time. This is an opportunity for me to reflect on all those opportunities that I had to work on things like efficiency, effectiveness, being polite, dealing with inconvenience in a respectful way. And you can meditate on this even in the DMV, you can meditate on this concept. You certainly have plenty of time to do it. You can try a few times till you get it right. I'm going to, use this opportunity, the emotions that it evokes in me, to think about what I can do so as not to cause situations like this to other people. And I'm going to accept this upon myself as some kind of a punishment for, it's amazing because it's every year that I have to renew the registration on the vehicles, so I guess every year I have to do this. I'm going to reflect on, how I can make myself better in this, not as bad at this, less likely to do this. There must be something I can learn from it, because clearly I'm imperfect, clearly I don't know everything, and clearly I need this cathartic experience that we call a Department of Motor Vehicles in order to perfect my worship of Hashem and my, appreciation of all that He does for me. So there's a way of looking at things. Even if your parents, next week we'll talk about what happens if your parents do something just humiliating or embarrassing on purpose. That's where it gets much more difficult. They berate you, they insult you, they damage your person or your property. Even so, at the end of the day, Hashem wanted you to have these parents. Why? Because He has a sense of humor. We'll have to, analyze that next week. But at very least, even if your parents are wrong or crazy or whatever, and there are such things as crazy parents, your acceptance of them, you submit to Hashem's providence and why He wanted you to have these parents. And put you in this situation. It's a test of your midot. You accept it, take it in stride, and you roll with the punches. To reject that implies the same midot that people who just reject everything Hashem does around them have. And that's what we're trying to avoid. So we work on accepting things that we don't really understand, because most of what Hashem does for us we don't understand either. For better or for worse, I guess. Seder. I hope we're still friends. We will meet with God's help next week.